One day we are rehearsing and the phone rings. My mother walks over to the phone. Hello? Michael Jackson's on the phone. That Michael Jackson, soon to be king of pop. My brother walks over to the phone. Hello? Okay. Hangs up the phone. Michael Jackson said he's heard of me. Said he heard I sing and dance just like him. He said for us to keep going. No matter what, do not stop. We will get there someday. In a 10-minute span, my family is about to go from here to here. My mother utters, your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. No, no, no. What did you just say? I immediately start tumbling, Vamshi. I just start dropping. PTSD is starting to settle. My mother then drops bomb number two. She says, I have known all along. You've known all along. You have allowed this to happen to my sisters all along? There was one more bomb to be dropped on my brothers and I, and it was the most devastating of all, the one that locked us down, put us in a box, and allowed us to be put on a shelf in the closet for decades, never to come out.
Welcome, Keeper, to the show. It's great to have you on. Thanks for being on.
I appreciate having me, Vamshi. Thank you so much.
Perfect. So let's dive right into your story. Start wherever's comfortable for you.
I am the author of the book Helplessness, the emotional health challenges brothers experience once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by our parents. It is a topic never discussed. When you're talking about child sexual abuse and the impact on brothers, we are often overlooked as an inconvenient truth. We are often overlooked as a taboo subject. Our emotions don't matter, and so I will get into how my story began. And then, Vamshi, we can go wherever you want to go. I come from a family of 10, four boys, four girls, stepfather, stepmother. We had an extremely challenging childhood growing up. I lived in 21 different places before I moved out. I was homeless three times. I went to 11 grade schools before I graduated high school. And in 1971, my mother and her brother and her sister decided they were going to start singing, and they were absolutely amazing. However, as good as they weren't able to bring in enough money. So my mother would always hear her kids singing around the house. It was the time that the Jackson Five were really taking off. A, B, C, I want you back. Who's loving you? I mean, it was everywhere. And so that's what we would be singing around the house. And so one day she says to us, would you kids like to sing? Because if we sang as a family, we could make more money. We really need more money. And of course, it was a no brainer for us. We're like, yeah, sure. The next thing you know, we are singing in after hour out nightclubs all over Los Angeles. I mean, it was 2 o'clock in the morning singing, getting up at 6 o'clock, go to school, come home, rehearse, get a nap, do it all over again. And we lived in South Central Los Angeles, which was such a gang infested area. It was the home of the Bloods and the Crips, and just the start of all of that type of rivalry and gang activity. Well, one day we are rehearsing on a Saturday, and the phone rings. My mother walks over to the phone. Hello? Who? Hold on a second. And she looks at us eight kids and says, Michael Jackson's on the phone. Yeah, that Michael Jackson, soon to be king of pop. She looks at the brother directly beneath me and says, he wants to talk to you. My brother walks over to the phone. Hello? You know, he's all smiles and stuff. Uh huh. Okay. Hangs up the phone. Screams. Michael Jackson said he's heard of me, said he heard I sing and dance just like him. He said for us to keep going, no matter what, do not stop. We will get there someday. Now, what kid could not build dreams after that? I mean, you're living on a life of poverty. We would go into the streets to grab bottles, to turn in, to try to get some money for a pound of ground beef or a bag of rice. That's what life was like for me. And here we are, Michael Jackson telling us to keep going. Jump cut to 1977. Our career is everywhere. We are with United Artists. We made Billboard magazine's top 100 3 times that year. Album, two singles, three other recommendations. We were everywhere. Concerts, magazines, Teen Beat, Right On. We were everywhere, Bomshi. It was crazy. Everything we touched turned to gold. It's also the same year that Motown Records completed their exhaustive 3 year search to replace Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, who they had lost 3 years earlier to Epic Records. And guess who they chose to replace them? My
Wow.
family. It was crazy. The woman who found Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 at Gary, Indiana, Suzanne DePass, she was the one walking us to Motown. She was like, this is the group to replace them. It was such a magical moment for us. And yet we're still very poor. We're still trying to make it, but those are the things that dreams are made of. Those are the things that say, wow. I like to say the bus was outside, the engine was running, the door was open. All we had to do was walk out onto the bus and we were gone. It was that way. They had created the TV series for us called At Wits End. In fact, I have the pilot episode in my office, the script. I have all of that. So the week comes for us to sign with Motown. In fact, they had offered us the largest new artist contract they offered any artist. What Michael Jackson could do, all 10 of us, excuse me, all 8 of us kids could do. We didn't have one lead singer, everybody could do it. We were playing instruments, we were doing all of it. And so the week coming up, we're going to sign with Motown. It was either just going to be on a Thursday or Friday. We just didn't know. So the Saturday prior to that, my sister screams upstairs, boys, come downstairs, family meeting. I'm like, yes, this is it. Life is about to change. It is about to be done. I'm about to be famous. I'm about to be rich. No more food stamps. No more scrounging for money. No more scrounging for bottles. It was over. I come downstairs. I walk into the living room. Entering the living room is an archway. And my oldest sister, number 3 of the 10 of us, directly underneath me, is pacing back and forth. She's mad. She's angry about something. I don't have any idea. Vamshi, she could always be angry, and it's usually something between her and my mom. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I'm like, oh, okay, she's doing whatever she's doing. She's tripping. Oh, all right. But as I entered, I looked at the couch, and at the far end of the couch are my 3 youngest sisters. They're the 3 youngest of all 8 of us, the twins, and then the sister right before them. But they're huddled in a corner. They're not saying a word, which was really odd because all they ever did was laugh and joke and tease people. It was incessant. It never stopped. But that was us. We were always like that. We were always buoyant, bubbly, at each other, having fun, doing something, and that's not all that unusual when you consider the type of work we were doing. I mean, we were together all the time. We were incredibly tight. But there are my 3 youngest sisters huddled in a corner. Okay, my oldest brother is standing at the far end of the couch directly behind him, and he's like me. He's bewildered. He doesn't understand what is going on. Do y'all understand what's about to happen in a few days? We are about to become infamous and famous and rich. All of it is about to happen. I look at my 2 youngest brothers who are also sitting on the couch, but they are wondering what is going on. Okay, this is not right. Within seconds after I walked in the couch, walked in the living room, my mother and my stepfather walked in. My stepfather goes and sits in a brown recliner in the middle of the living room. And he immediately bends over, and does this. What the hell? What? No. My mother, who's just as buoyant as us and bubbly and effervescent and energetic, is looking like this. She walks to the middle of the room and stands in front of the window that looks out to the front of the house. And she turns and she looks at her kids, stoic. All right, this is not the meeting I was expecting, not even close. My mother is quiet for about a minute, and us 8 kids are quiet. But my stepfather, he's fidgeting in the chair, and my oldest sister is still pacing, fuming. You can just feel the heat coming off of her. Now, earlier that day, my sisters were going in and out of a bedroom, going in and out of a bathroom, all of them together, which was weird because they never did that. And you could hear bits of anger. You could hear them being agitated. It was like a bunch of agitated bees in a hive, just something's wrong. And you could hear doors slamming every now and then that morning. Jesus, what is happening? I'm about to find out. I'm about to learn in 10 minutes things that no brother could ever prepare for. I'm about to hear words no brother could ever or should ever expect to hear. In a 10-minute span, my family is about to go from here to here. My mother utters the first few words. Once again, she scans and then looks at those of us at the couch. Your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. What? What did you just say? No, no. What did you just say? I immediately start tumbling, Vamshi. I just start dropping. PTSD is starting to settle quickly. And I'm just falling and falling. No, I'm not comprehending because this is impossible. No, this is not us. And as I'm tumbling, I'm hearing liquor store, I'm hearing park, I'm hearing apartment, I'm hearing this sister, I'm hearing that sister, but it's not registering because why would it register? Not us. We had been singing for years and we were the family. In fact, in the black neighborhood, we were the perfect black family. Everyone we knew wanted to be part of our family. All of our friends, all the kids that had come to see us, I want to be part of that family. And now I'm hearing this. My mother then drops bomb number two. She says, I have known all along. What did, no. You've known all along. You have allowed this to happen to my sisters all along. How could I not know? Me and my brothers don't have a clue, Vamshi. We don't know. But it turns out that's what the conversation between my sisters that morning was all about. It was about today is the day we tell the boys what has been going on. And my mother is angry because she has been forced to have to tell us by our sisters. Otherwise, my sisters were going to tell her. No, the abyss is getting darker. The void is getting larger, and I'm just tumbling. And I just know my brothers are just tumbling because this is not us. It is often said by just about any family on the planet Outside these four walls, no one can break us. We are so tight, nothing can break this family. Every family on the planet will just about tell you that. They will swear by it. They will go to the mat for that. And they are absolutely correct. But it's usually not the people outside the family that rips you apart. It's usually the people inside. And in our case, it was my mother and my stepfather for years. There was one more bomb to be dropped on my brothers and I, and it was the most devastating of all, the one that locked us down, put us in a box, and allowed us to be put on a shelf in the closet for decades, never to come out. My oldest sister, who had been pacing the front entryway into the living room, spun around and pointed a finger at her brothers and said, "You can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. You can't talk about it ever." And like that, relationships between brothers and sisters that were so incredibly tight lay broken in pieces on the living room floor. And there is where the story begins. Because you are a brother, you've just heard the most horrific news you could possibly hear about your sisters, that your parents have been sexually abusing your sisters. Your stepfather has been doing horrific things to them, we would come to learn later. And your mother empowered all of it. As devastating as that was, as I said, the most devastating was being locked down and told we can't talk about it. Because as a brother, where do you go with that? How do you recover from that news? I understood what my sister was doing. She was protecting herself and she was protecting her sister. But when brothers, once we learn about what has happened, cannot participate in the conversation, we are told that we are disposable. Our emotions are shunted to the side. They're unimportant. It is not you. But to be told it didn't happen to us, of course it happened to us. The minute we heard it, it happened to us. And we have to have some place to go with this. In 1977, Vamsi, there were no support systems for brothers. You could go into just about any library and you could find all sorts of articles and books written by women for women because of the historic nature of which men have treated women when it comes to sexual abuse. Granted, men and boys have had their sexual abuse, but women control the narrative. And I happen to agree they should to a large extent. You could get a documentary every now and then. You'd even get a TV movie. We didn't have all the streaming stuff that we have now, but every now and then you get a movie about a woman overcoming the challenges of being sexually abused. There was nothing for men and absolutely nothing for brothers. So what do? Where do you go? My mission is to elevate the voices of brothers in the conversation, is to bring us into the conversation. Because part of the challenge is when you are told you can't participate in the conversation, but then be expected to answer for your non participation, which is what ended up happening with me and my brothers, those two things cannot exist in the same place. You can't talk about it, but you've got to answer for it. So the question becomes, how do we bring brothers into the conversation so that sisters and brothers are not enemies, but allies? And how do we help brothers heal? Here in the United States, there are upwards of 50 to 60 million adults walking around who've been sexually abused by children. 70% of all child sexual abuse happens by people incredibly close: mother, father, uncle, aunt, someone like that. That's 70%. Another 20% is by caregivers, babysitters, teachers, anyone who's a caregiver. I will also say this because I think it's important. When my sister locked us boys down, and we did not talk about it, Vamshi, for almost 45 years, not even amongst ourselves. We were so incredibly fearful of bringing it up that 6 years prior to my sisters being sexually abused, my older brother and I were sexually abused by our babysitter almost daily for 6 months. So here you've got a family of 8 children. Six have been sexually abused, not including my brother directly under me, who was being groomed by his teacher in high school. We could call that number seven. The reason why I bring up my story and why it's important because very often when I'm speaking and I'm in these live events, there and we're going to take questions. There's usually a woman who will say, "Well, you can't talk about it. It only happened to your sisters. You guys, you're just kind of collateral damage." Yes, we are collateral damage, but we are damaged, and you cannot go to a place where you are trying to justify one's trauma being greater than the other. But then when I tell them what happened to me, that's when a light bulb goes off like, oh, you understand both sides. You understand what it's like to be the damage side and the collateral damage side. And as I said, the question becomes how do men whose relationships with women from the time they are children are determined by the amount of help they do or do not get go forward? Because all of this impacts every aspect of our lives, every relationship that we have, particularly with women and girls. It impacts our jobs. It impacts people we hang out with. It impacts how we react to certain things, things that trigger us. Could be a song, could be a movie, could be seeing something, and you just, and the memories just come flooding back in.
I imagine you're not alone. And in doing this, you've probably discovered you're not alone at all, right?
You're absolutely correct. I have spoken to hundreds of men. And no, I'm not alone. And that's part of it. And you hit on something real important. Recognizing and understanding that you are not alone. Because oftentimes, as men, we can very easily go to this place where we just hunker down and we bring our emotions in and we don't let anyone else in. It's just me. I'm dealing with this. It's my problem. And a lot of that is a part of the construct that society has placed on us. And then there's also the part that we've embraced and said, yes, that's me. I'm King Kong. I'm the man. I can handle anything. So you've got that. And then you've got the inability to engage with our sisters or those who are already, well, it's just sisters and possibly other women who have gone through it. Because oftentimes they can take the position that they're the only ones, which of course they are not. And that's just controlling the conversation because, as I said, historically, it has been necessary for them to do so in order to protect themselves.
And also, for a period of time, technically, your sisters were the collateral damage because you and your brother had been abused before your sisters.
Right.
They didn't know about
Absolutely.
it, but it was there.
Yeah. And that's really another interesting point because when my sister said it didn't happen to us, all the time had been happening to them, even though we didn't know about it, it was happening to us. It may impact the way they were talking to us. It may have impacted how they were interacting throughout the house. And we're like, why are you upset? It's because we didn't know what had happened to them the night before. We didn't know what had happened to them that morning. And so we are getting this energy that is not always a loving energy, but can be an angry, it could be fear, it could be doubt, it could be anxiety, it could be so many things. And so for my sisters, when me and my brother are being sexually abused, they not knowing about it, of course, it impacts who we are and what we are about, especially as little boys and them like little girls. My stepfather started on my sisters my youngest, the twins, when they were 5 and 6. And this went on when you calculate. me and my older brother's previous 6 years, almost 17 years of
Wow.
just this trauma that is impacting our house. And yet we are still trying to make something of our lives. I'm often asked, so what happened in the 45 years later? Because I started writing Helplessness in 2013. It took me 10 years to finish it because it was so traumatizing. And learning who I am as a man and as a brother and going through the guilt of the woulda, coulda, shoulda moments along the way was devastating. And then finally trying to figure out a way back to my sisters because we went years without talking to a few of them. It was devastating. And so when brothers are locked out of this sort of when this in conversation, because when my sister said you can't talk about it, the people we needed to speak to the most, who could help us understand, just told us they wanted nothing to do with us. The people who we would probably go to next, my mother or even my stepfather, they were the monsters. They were the dragons in the house. They were the one burning up everything. And so we couldn't go there. We went to aunts and uncles, and they wanted nothing to do with it. Some of them, because they were hoping we were going to do this big deal with Motown, this would be their chance to hang on. They get a little peace. I would learn later that both my grandmothers had known, and they did nothing because they grew up in an era when, no, you guys take care of that. That happens in your house. You guys handle it. But all along, what is happening is we kids are being sacrificed. We are being betrayed all along the way. In the United States, it is reported that 160 unique children are sexually abused daily, every day, just here in the United States. And these are the ones that are reported. So this situation is a global epidemic because it happens everywhere. Oftentimes, people start looking at it when they're talking to me and say, well, how does that compare to the black race, or how does that compare to the white race, or brown, yellow, whatever? And I tell them it is irrelevant because this situation crosses religious lines, political lines, wealth lines, education. It crosses every border you could possibly think of. It crosses oceans. This happens everywhere.
So when your sister said you couldn't talk about it, she meant you can't talk about it with her and your other sisters. Did she also mean you can't talk about it with, teachers, the police,
We
etc.?
couldn't talk about it to anyone. And me and my brothers took it literally in the way that she delivered it. It became a literal manifestation for us. We didn't even talk about it amongst ourselves.
So why were they so
And
insistent to tell you that day if you couldn't talk about it afterwards?
I think with the looming Motown contract coming up, particularly with my oldest sister, she saw where we were about to go to a place in popularity and fame that was going to be a situation where we had to not only pretend nothing was going on, but during that pretending, they would still be targets. And the only way to stop them from being molested was to bring it to a full stop, regardless of what was going on. And in hindsight, I happen to agree. Granted, you think about it, and like, I would love the cars and the homes and the hundreds of millions of dollars potentially that was waiting for us. But can you imagine, Vamshi, every time there's a new series on a famous family that was destroyed on MTV or BET or VH1 or something like that, or Behind the Music, every now and then it's the story of your family and the trauma and the triggering that would just flood every emotion that you have. And it would be something that we could never escape because the world would constantly know about it. Our children would be bombarded with it. Our grandchildren would be bombarded about it. And so I think what they did was was the right thing to do. Some of us continue to try to keep going because, just from the music standpoint, because we were contractually bound, even though we were still with United Artists and we hadn't cut the deal with Motown. So we had to finish out our contract with United Artists because Motown was going to buy that out. And so we had to keep going. And we lost my oldest sister. We lost one of my brothers. We lost one of the twins. And we're like, well, we got to eat. We still got to pay bills. We still have to pay back this money to this record company, which is over couple $100,000. We have to pay that back. And so we tried to keep going. And we ended up making Billboard again in 1980. But in the process, whenever we were together, the tension was always there. Now, part of the thing that people ask me, so what happened in the immediate aftermath of you learning about? What happened at the end of the 10 minutes? Because I'm about 16, 17. My older brother is about 17 as well, but we're kids. And when adults hear stories like this in their family, they are rocked to their core. They don't know what to do. They're immediately pushed back because the information is so traumatizing and you're trying to figure it out and the implications of what it means to you and your family and your children and your life and all this. It's not something that you can just immediately just go and start tearing things apart. You can't do that. Even though people will tell me, dude, if that was me, I would have done this to him. I would have done that to him. And they tell my sisters, girl, I would have done this. I would have done that. And we all say noise. That is noise because you don't know what you're going to do in the middle of it. I mean, what do you mean? This is what you would have done? Are you serious? You have no idea. I mean, when you are in a car accident, you're you're knocked off balance. How are you going to deal with this accident? And now we're talking about three major earthquakes just breaking your house and your family apart.
Or
So we
as the
go
great Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
you know, absolutely correct. I can see you listen to a lot of motivational stuff. I can see this right now because we were talking about David Goggins and we were talking about Eric Thomas and we were talking about Kobe Bryant, who I love listening to his motivational stuff just about every day. So yeah, that is one of Mike Tyson's favorite quotes. Until you get punched in the face, you can't say what you're going to do. And we were hit left and right, left and right, uppercut. I mean, we got it all. We got the Mike Tyson elbow, right, left. We got all of it. The ear was bitten off. That's what happened to our life. Our lives were just shattered. There were plenty of moments along the way where I could have done something, even afterwards, and I didn't. And my book details every failure that I did because this is a brother's story. It's a brother's story. Helplessness is a brother's story about how do you overcome this. And at the end of the day, it is a story of hope. It is a story of triumph. It is a story of resilience. It is a story of how do you pick yourself up after all of this. I went 9 years before I did anything because my mother said she would handle it. And we all eight of us felt, okay, she's going to take care of this. She's going to do the right thing this one time, and then we will figure out ourselves after this. And of course, handling it to us was getting him out of the house immediately. That was a very short lived proposition because the next thing you know, she has brought him back. And we're all stunned. What just happened? We just got rid of him. Now you're saying you want us to deal with him? Well, we need his income. And we're like, no, 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 no. We can do this. So she ends up betraying us again. And as I said, Bonchi, it took me 9 years. And as a brother, you are constantly dealing with this guilt and shame of not doing something. Because as I said, we took our sister's words literally. Don't do anything. Don't say anything. Don't talk to anybody. Even as we were, as I said, continuing to try to do something, I would still hear little whispers. How come you didn't hear my weeping? How come you didn't see my tears? How come? How come? How come? And that's the beauty for the predators. making sure no one knows. And his making sure, he and my mom's making sure no one knows was making sure my sisters did not talk. Because any victim will tell you, usually of sexual abuse, and in particular child sexual abuse, if you talk, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt your brothers. I'm going to hurt your sisters. So they did not tell us the whole time. And it was also the same reason I did not tell my sisters what happened to me because I was so scared. Who wants to tell someone that happened to them? Today, there are even more books for women. There are movies all over the place. There are documentaries, there are TV interviews. There are 12-step programs. There's counseling everywhere, specifically for women and women who were sexually abused as children. They're everywhere. For brothers, there is today nothing. We are still left to try to figure it out. And we cannot figure it out on our own. We need help. We need people to help us process. We need people to help us understand who we are. Because as I said earlier, the men we grow to become is directly impacted by the type of help we do or do not get. And if we don't get help, it impacts all of our relationships, especially those with women.
Have you been able to forgive yourself?
I go through periods of I'm a good guy, and the reason why I say it like that is because there was a time about 3 months in 1986 where I was about to get married to my fiance, still my wife. We've been married 38 years this year, and I was going into such a dark place, Bomshi, such a dark place. This is a two-part answer for you, and you will understand why. I have so much difficulty with me. But I think it's important that I be vulnerable about all of it. And in my book, I am incredibly vulnerable about everything that I did and did not do. 3 months before I was to get married, I was just tumbling down. I had moved in with my fiance, but I just was still having a hard time. My mother was started seeing him on the side again. In fact, she brought him back into the house, and I still had a younger sister there. The other three had already moved out. My younger brother was still there, but my mom always had this thing about image, 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 image. Her image was always paramount, and she could not allow her image to be one that people found out that her children had been sexually abused and she allowed it to happen, and that she had also lost her man in the process. So she brought him back in because having him around her was more important than what we were going through. Imagine that. These are the 8 children that you had. And when they were born, you said to yourself, I will protect you at all costs. I will walk through fire for you. I will destroy any and everything that tries to destroy you. And in the end, she let it happen. So 3 months before I was to get married, I told my fiance, because I knew he was over there, I said, I've got to go. I got to go back home for the weekend because I still had a bedroom there. And she asked me, is everything okay? And I said, well, I think so. She said, will you be back this weekend? I said, I hope so. Is there anything I can do? I said, no, no, there's nothing that you can do. I've got to handle this. I'm the only one who can do it. Kissed her goodbye and left. Went over to the house on a Saturday afternoon, went upstairs to my old bedroom and just sat for about 2 hours, sweating profusely, nervous, imagining all the things that he did to my sisters, pulling them into a closet, unzipping his pants, letting his pants drop to the floor. I'm just imagining all of this, bringing them into the bedroom with no lights and just feeling all over them. I'm just seeing all of this and I'm just going darker and darker and darker. And I had determined that night was going to be his last night. I went to the bedroom waiting because there were 2 bedrooms upstairs. As I said, there's mine. I was upstairs, in my mother and stepfather's bedroom. We were separated by about 30 feet, but I could hear them whenever they would be walking around. So I'm in the bedroom, Banshee, and I'm just sweating, dude. The windows open, and I, it's a cool night, and I'm agitated, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, and then I start getting, well, he's so much bigger than me because he's 6'6", 250 pounds, and he wore an afro that put his height over 7 feet tall. I'm 5'8", 145 pounds. He towers over me. He swallows me up, and yet I have got to end this. I have got to slay this monster. And so I'm in the bedroom and I'm thinking, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that. Okay, but what about he's so much bigger? And then images of my sisters would just pop into my head. And like, okay, no, 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 you're doing it, you're doing it, you're doing it. That went on for 2 hours. I'm waiting to hear their bedroom door open. And then I finally hear it. Creak. That's it. I swing my feet off the bed because I was lying on the bed. I just put my feet on the bed and I sit up and I look to the door and I hear their bedroom door close. I stand up, I walk to the door. I crack the door and I look out. It's him. Look how huge he is. I never imagined how much bigger he was to me than before that time. I knew he was big, but now that I'm in this incredibly fearful state, doubt, anxiety is all over me. And I am looking to do something incredibly difficult. I had determined this was going to be his last 24 hours on the planet. It was going to happen. And I was okay for this because the instrument of his death was leaning next to my door. It was my favorite baseball bat. I was going to kill him with this bat. I step outside the door and I lock eyes on him, and he sees me and he starts walking toward me and he starts smiling, hey, and I just do this. Comprehension dawned on his face. Hey, he knows something's wrong. We walk closer and closer to each other. In the middle of the hall is a short 3 foot wall that overlooked the stairwell. And I knew I could not have my back there because I knew we were going to meet in the center of the hall. We meet in the center of the hall, and my back is against the short wall. I'm like, God damn, this is a place I'm not supposed to be. So I'm able to spin around just enough to get away from the wall. But we're right up against each other. We're not face to face because he's so much bigger than me. We are face to chest. My face is in his chest. He's so much bigger than me. I cannot see over his shoulders. Never could. But there he is. And this is the time the brother is going to do what has to be done. I'm going to kill him. He stops and he looks down at me. And I look up and I say, you have 24 hours to leave this house. If you are still here by this time tomorrow, you will be dead because I will have killed you. I turn around and walk back to the bedroom. As I'm walking back to my bedroom, I'm hearing footsteps behind me. And I start shaking. Okay, get into the bedroom, close the door. And I'm still hearing footsteps. I make it into the bedroom and I close the door. And I'm just waiting for the door to open, but it never opens. The footsteps are fading. They're going in the other direction. Okay, he's gone back to him in mom's bedroom. I gather the bat and I go outside, get into my Fiat X19, my little orange little convertible Fiat, go to my fiance's place. And she says, "Is everything okay?" I said, "I'm not sure. I've got to go back tomorrow." The next day I get up, I go to the house. I have my bat in hand and I'm walking up to the door. And in that instant, I decide to leave the bat outside because I did not want to agitate the situation just yet, even though I'm expecting to walk through the front door and there's a gun pointing in my face because one of us is about to die. That is very, very clear to me. And I was so ready to die for my sisters. I didn't care. I didn't care about anything. I mean, I was losing weight. I wasn't eating. I had stopped working. All I could think about was kill this guy and my sisters would be okay. That's one of the dumbest things I could have possibly have thought, but that's what I was thinking because I'm a brother. I've got to do something. I have failed them. I have betrayed them. I walk into the house. There's no sounds. And then I hear a sound at the back of the house. I walk back there, makeshift studio. My younger brother is there, and I said, "Is he still here?" My younger brother says, "No, he left. He left early this morning, and then he was gone. He was finally gone." Until the day of my wedding, when I wanted to make amends with my mother and try to create some kind of relationship, I did something that, and you asked that I was I able to forgive myself. This is the reason why I hesitate. I got him out of the house, but I wanted so badly to have a relationship with my mom and try to do something that could put the family back together so we could at least, so we could, I don't know, I just didn't know what I was thinking. But I spoke to her a couple of nights before my wedding, and I said, "Look, understand," and I'm doing an olive branch kind of thing here because I know I'm going to have kids, and I want them to know their grandmother in some sense. And I go over and I tell her, "Understand this: we do not want him at the wedding. We don't want him at the wedding. But if you want to invite him, I'm going to leave it up to you. But know this: we do not want him. Period." And I'm thinking, okay, this was offering something from my mother. We could kind of build on this moment because she could see it. Okay, at least she's talking to me again. Her reply was, "Give me a couple of days to think about it." And in that moment, Vamshi, I knew what I had done because I try to keep my word. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I roll with it, the consequences. Our wedding day, there he is in the wedding party. My mother had invited him to be in the wedding. And the brother who got rid of him for his sisters is responsible for putting him back in front of them. What did I do? What was already a very delicate situation, that was the wrap. It was done. It was done. One sister spoke to me after that, and I did that. And it's because I was trying to make some sort of relationship for my family. I was trying to create a situation where we could at least come back together in some situation under some sort of conditions. But I ended up doing the very thing for me that I felt my mom did, which was betrayed them. And so my struggle to get back to my sisters was the one that took so long. And it wasn't until 2021 that I was able to bring some closure for them when I met my stepfather at a church in Van Nuys. And he was at a service for his then wife who had passed away in December of 2020. They were having a celebration of life ceremony for her at a church in Van Nuys. It was happening to be about 15 minutes from me, of all places. I found it on Facebook. He had announced it on Facebook. Sexual predator. Imagine that. Good Lord. But they're so brazen. He had announced he was having this service. And I went there, let them have their service. And after the service, I took over the church for 90 minutes. And it was a magnificent day. Called my sisters, told them what I did, and confronted him, and they were in tears. And from that moment, uh, I've been able to have relationships with my sisters, so much so that three of them contribute to my book. They actually they're actually have sections in the book. So do two of my brothers, and they will write in the other two books, which is amazing. It's so important that we have these discussions, particularly as it relates to brothers and our emotional challenges. Sexual predators, on average, will attack 172 times in their life. 172 times. They will molest someone. And so we've got to be able to protect children. And once again, we have to be able to bring brothers into the conversation. At the end of the day, brothers and sisters, men, women, we all want the same thing. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. And we all want to live productive lives.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Keeper. It's been great having you on.
Well, if people wanted to read more about the story and get a better sense of what it is, understand it's a very difficult read, but it is a real read. They can get the book on Amazon. They can go to my website, keepercatherine.whitney.com. They can go to my YouTube channel and see all sorts of videos and conversations that we've had about this. And hopefully, brothers and sisters, as I said earlier, can become allies as opposed to enemies.